As we look at this different angle of the gospel, as we look at the created, as we look at people, according to the Bible, the Creator creates people in His own image. That is to say, when God created us, He put us in charge of His creation to do things His way. Because the consensus of ancient world thought was that an image was believed to carry the essence of that which it represented. So we represent God because we were created in His image. And people being created in the image of God is crucial to know because the gospel is handmade for people made in the image of God. Because people were made to be like God and to be with God forever. And it doesn't take too much time on this earth to know that the reality of the fall, the reality of sin and brokenness and separation from God makes the reality of the gospel to people made in the image of God, to people that represent God, that much sweeter. Because get this, God's gospel is so good that although it's your life and you can make your choices and you could do the things that you like to do and you could be who you want to be and you could think the way that you want to think, it doesn't change that you were created in His image. It doesn't change that you were created to represent God. In fact, it highlights this truth. Just like you do what you want to do, God does what He wants to do because God is sovereign. You see, when we look at the Bible, we see God's sovereignty. We see God's providence. God being above you in every sense possible, to the degree of knowing all of your sin and all of your selfishness and all of your pride, and also to the degree of deeply knowing how sacred your soul is. God, in all His sovereignty, created you to represent Him, to take care of His creation, knowing full well that He calculated all of your sin from birth to death, because God, in all His sovereignty, desires people that represent Him to forever experience fellowship with Him. And the way we see this truth unfold before our eyes to God's love for us is through the gospel. Because the gospel is handmade for people made in the image of God. That's why we see the Bible reveal to us that just like God is spirit, because of God, we possess an immortal spirit without being equal to God. Which is why when we look at Genesis, we see Adam and Eve in the garden, while God is both above the garden and with Adam and Eve in the garden. And once Adam and Eve misrepresented God, God being who He is, sovereign, full of mercy and grace, a God that is slow to anger, a God that is loving, a God that is faithful and forgiving, we see God banishing Adam and Eve from the garden, while at the same time we see God blessing Adam and Eve with the gospel. We see God being real to Adam and Eve, people made in His image, and we even see God being real to Satan, a being in direct opposition to His image. In Genesis 3:15, God tells the devil, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise her head, and you shall bruise his heel. That was all the way back then. As for right now, just about 2,000 years ago, Jesus sovereignly came to make things right. Because God chose to do that. Because God knows how sacred your soul is. Because we were made in His image to represent